As a random guy who records himself yelling about useless crap and then posts his ramblings online, I get a lot of recommendations. So many that I started writing them down to keep track just in case I ever run out of stuff to do. Very rarely does anyone recommend a good game for me to check out because you guys are a bunch of sadists who enjoy my pain. But one of my viewers suggested that I play World War II Aces, which he called the best flying game that he's ever played.
You've been bamboozled!
This is the best game ever!
So now I'm in a bit of a predicament, because either I've been duped into reviewing a horrid game by a guy swearing up and down that it's fantastic, or I'm about to shit all over a loyal viewer's favorite game. So World War II Aces is a flying game, and it's a fairly straightforward one. Outside of the special planes you get at the end of the game, all of the planes have two weapons, bullets and bombs, the latter of which are only useful against land-based targets. The game's levels are, naturally, based on levels from World War II, and I'm sure if I did research I'd be able to say really loosely based, with really spelled with like 5 or 6 E's. The downside to being based on real-life events is that there isn't much variety to the enemies. There aren't the varied enemies from Star Fox or the variety of ships and scenarios in Star Wars and Free Space. You pretty much just fight one plane cloned a few hundred times through the entire game, and the only different enemies you'll ever fight are tanks or the rare anti-aircraft turret. This is a really straightforward game. Let's start with the controls, because they really screwed the pooch on this one. The game has 3 control schemes to choose from, and since the game doesn't list the controls anywhere, you better hope you have the instructions. And I did read the instructions because console gamers can read, Spoony, you jackass! The first control scheme uses only the Wii remote held sideways. You tilt the remote to steer your plane, use 1 and 2 for weapons, and use the directions on the control pad to accelerate, brake, and hard turn left or right. The Wii remote steering works really well, but the developers found a way to screw it up. If you tilt the remote too far upwards too suddenly, you do a somersault, and trying to turn left or right too quickly does a loop-de-loop. So your plane is constantly doing special maneuvers that you don't want to do every time you need to react and do a sudden move. I'm not kidding, one time I found myself accidentally flying downward too quickly, I tried to pull up too suddenly, and I somersaulted right into the ground and crashed. And I swear I immediately do a somersault half the time that I try to take off. What's weird is that if you try to turn too far left or right at once, the game will have you do a really sudden U-turn. Not only are these U-turns so damn abrupt that they completely disorient you and they happen when you least expect it, but the instruction manual doesn't say anything about U-turns, so either the manual forgets to mention them or this is some kind of weird glitch. And trust me, the other control schemes eat too. The second control scheme uses the Wii remote and the nunchuck. Here you tilt the nunchuck to turn your plane, the control stick at control pad control acceleration and special maneuvers, and the nunchuck's C and Z weapons fire weapons. The problem with this control scheme is that you hold the nunchuck in your non-dominant hand. So I'm right-handed and steering the plane by moving my left hand, I can't keep the damn plane level enough to line up a good shot. Unless you're ambidextrous or you train like crazy, your plane is going to jitter incessantly the entire time you play, and that's without how much more difficult it is to steer in the first place. You can, of course, switch hands, and I almost think this is how the game expects you to play, but this doesn't feel intuitive at all because now the heavier controller is in your non-dominant hand, plus it's backward from every other Wii game in existence. It feels so awkward your hands just want to crawl off of your wrists. The third control scheme is the same as the second, only with the buttons swapped. You're still steering with the nunchuck, and it still sucks. So all 3 control schemes blow ass. Your best bet is the Wii remote only, because at least you can keep your damn plane level. Here's an idea if you're already got alternate control schemes and a nunchuck. Control stick steers, A and B fire weapons, C and Z accelerate and brake, control pad does special maneuvers. There, I just fixed your damn game! The game has 3 campaigns, the British Royal Air Force, the Nazi Luftwaffe, and the Russian Red Army Air Force. All 3 factions have the exact same aircraft, at least from a functional standpoint. You start the game with a fighter and a bomber. Midway through the game you can use fighter bombers, and presumably late in the game you unlock specialty aircraft, which is allegedly the only place where the factions' planes differ. This is speculation because I haven't gotten far enough to find out. Fighters are faster, can fire bullets longer without overheating, and carry 10 bombs at a time before needing to reload. Bombers travel slower, can barely fire before their guns overheat, and make up for it by carrying 30 bombs at a time before they have to reload. The bombers suck, you'll never use them, and I'll explain why later. Your wingmen are, surprisingly, fairly competent. They manage to shoot down a fair number of enemy planes, and far more useful for reasons we'll dig into later, they're extremely effective meat shields that stop the AI from attacking you. The only problem with your partner AI is that every now and then one of your allies will decide to do nothing except attack land-based enemies, and instead of using bombs, they use bullets, which is about as useful against land-based enemies as if a bird had shit on them. At least the bird shit would screw up the paint job. The only way to snap them out of doing this is to destroy all of the land enemies yourself, which your objectives will probably have you do anyway. Now, the game started out pretty promising. The controls take a little getting used to, and the combat is very simple since there's basically one enemy type and you have one weapon, but it's still pretty fun. But then I got to the 4th level of the British campaign and OW! OW! Shit! Ah! Jeez! Let's try that again. Aw, crap, I have to take out those U-boats. Wow, they could not have spawned further away from me, can they have? Ow! Stop that! Stop that! Leave me alone! How the hell am I supposed to take out my objective when I'm getting shot at from 5 off-screen directions? Shit! Okay, ow! No! I got this! I got this! Ah! Shit! Fuck! Okay, screw that, we're switching to the Russian campaign. Now, oh god, they're everywhere here too! No! No! So, game has a problem with its difficulty. Once you get a few levels into each campaign, you run smack into a brick wall where the game just gets oppressively difficult. The game swarms you with so many planes at once that it just becomes ridiculous. No matter where you go, you're getting attacked by about 6 different planes at once, and it's tough to even thin out the enemy numbers because there are so damn many enemies in the area that no sooner are you tracking an enemy than 2 or 3 more are already on your tail. It is entirely too common to end up with 5 enemies on your tail at once, and all of them attacking you at once. And believe you me, you don't last very long with 5 streams of bullets being shoved up your exhaust pipe at once. You only get 1 life per level, and there's no way to recover health. Once the enemies swarm and you start bleeding health, you're pretty much screwed. And I remind you that I'm getting my ass handed to me with a side of sauerkraut in the 4th level of a 24-level campaign! You know, considering that this level has you, 1 plane with 0 backup, protecting a fleet from a squad of about 30 fighters plus U-boats, screw it, the Nazis can have this one. The key problem with the game is that the AI is not balanced. Enemies are not programmed to back off if there's a ton of them in the area at once. Several enemies can spawn at once, and every single one of them is programmed with the prime directive of hunting you down. Like they somehow know that they just need to kill you to win the level. Every single enemy goes after you, and only you, and you get overwhelmed and you die. Hell, most of the time in escort missions, the enemies will completely ignore the objective that you're supposed to defend, so that all of the enemies are free to go after you. This is all in contrast to, off the top of my head, Star Fox and Rogue Squadron, where there are a ton of enemies in the area, but only a few of them attack you at once. The rest either attack the main objective or stay more or less idle until you're free. It's unrealistic, but it keeps the game balanced, fun, playable. In this game, you can end up with well over 10 enemies on the map, and every single one of them attacks you at once. Plus, enemies tend to spawn in waves, huge waves, and the game does not wait for one wave to die before the next one comes. It's all set on timers. So if you take too long to destroy enemies, new groups will just keep jumping in until you get dogpiled into oblivion. The only saving grace that makes several of the levels tolerable is that if you have Wingmen, the AI will divide its attention about equally between you and your allies. But you don't have Wingmen through probably over half the levels. You pretty much have to ignore your objectives for as long as possible and take out as many planes as you can so the unbalanced AI doesn't swamp you to where it's just not possible to survive. And I know that all of the bad guys focusing on the one good guy in the area is realistic, but we were looking at realism in the rearview mirror when they gave the planes unlimited ammo, replenishing bombs, and about 15 times the health of the enemy planes. This wasn't done out of realism. This was done because the devs didn't know any better. Well, after a lot of dying and rage quitting, I finally finished the 4th British level. There are 2 tricks to finishing this level. The first trick is to exploit a flaw in the AI's programming. The AI planes spawn on the opposite side of the map as the fleet does, and they're programmed to do nothing but fly in a straight line until they reach either the fleet or you. If you fly off to the side of a squadron as it comes in and loop around behind them, the AI will stay in formation and keep flying straight toward the fleet while you pick them off from behind or the side. They somehow don't register that you're engaging them, and they stick to their pre-recorded flight path. If you don't use this trick to majorly thin out the enemy numbers, you will get swarmed and overrun, since once the AI activates, they become far too evasive for you to shoot them down quickly. The The second trick to finishing this level is to flat out ignore your orders when you're told to take out the enemy U-boats. The U-boats spawn so far away from you that you'll get butchered if you try to fly over to them, but for reasons I will never understand, the U-boats head straight for the fleet rather than firing torpedoes from a safe distance. You just have to wait for the U-boats to come to you and you can take them out at your leisure. You'll lose a few allies this way, but it's better than getting shot down and failing the entire mission. I only figured this shit out by sheer luck and trial and error, by the way. There's a third trick too. Make sure you're playing on easy difficulty. The game has 3 difficulty settings, and if you play on normal or hard difficulties, you will get pounded into the dirt so hard the next time anyone will see you is the next time a volcano erupts. The implication being that you'll be drilled through the Earth's crust and into the mantle, which is what comes out when a volcano erupts. Point is, you'll die. A lot. On normal difficulty, not only is the AI much faster and much more accurate, but you have significantly less health. It's harder to hit the enemies because they're much more maneuverable, and you have much less time to kill them before you burst into flames. Even your meat shield allies that keep the enemies distracted off you don't help you, because they seem to have traded out their airplanes for craft made of tinfoil and string. Check this out. 5 seconds in, and half my wingmen have been Yamcha'd. The easy mode is the only difficulty level where it's feasible to survive against the unbalanced AI, and what's worse is, every time you boot up the game, it starts with the normal difficulty selected. If you forget to change the difficulty, well, the mantle thing. In this, the 5th level of the British campaign, you and 4 wingmen have to destroy a large squadron of Nazi fighters. I beat this level with no troubles on easy, got about halfway through on normal. Cheese and rice! How many bullets does it take to make sure that I stay dead? No, pause. Pause that footage. I want you to guess how many enemies are on my tail right now. Everybody, place your bets! 8! 8 monkey fighting planes were following and shooting me at once! And that's just what we saw before the game stopped for the game over screen on Mission 5! On the occasions that the AI actually does what it's supposed to do, the escort missions reach controller-breaking levels of frustration. First off, it doesn't help that your escort, and objectives in general, always seem to appear on the complete opposite side of the map as you. Unless you get lucky and the AI ignores your escort, you cannot afford to ignore the enemies chasing you to go babysit whatever you're supposed to be escorting. If you don't proactively defend yourself, you will get ripped to shreds and fail the mission. By the same token, the enemies are so damn persistent that you can't afford to spend the time you need saving your own bacon, because your escort will get butchered while you try to fend off the ravenous AI that's out for your blood. You get the feeling that this game wasn't play-tested to get the AI down to a non-broken level of difficulty. In the 9th mission of the British campaign, you have to destroy a bunch of tanks and other land-based vehicles. In other words, this level is specifically designed for you to use the bomber, since the entire objective is the land-based enemies. There's just one teeny tiny problem. Enemy planes spawn continuously throughout the entire level, and since you're the only good guy in the area, every single one of them comes charging at you. You don't get halfway through bombing your objectives before your slow ass is getting perforated by 12 different planes. The British bomber has 2 auto-aiming turrets that take out the enemies stalking you, but if these things actually managed to hit someone, I think I'd shit myself. Guys, not to tell you how to do your jobs, but could you try maybe, I don't know, hitting something? And if you know nothing about planes, trying to dogfight in a bomber is a catastrophically bad idea. The fighters are so much more agile than you that once they exit your field of vision, they're basically gone. The bomber has, like, no defense against the enemy planes. Yes, I get it, I'm dead. Stop shooting me now. So the bomber is completely useless. Even in the levels that are specifically designed for it, the fighter is the far better choice. The fighter's bombs replenish quickly, so it's just as effective against ground targets, and the fighter will actually survive fights with the other planes. Kinda makes you wonder if they play-tested at all to balance out the different ships. They probably just said, one ship isn't useless, we're good. Whoa, did you see that? Play it again. Those 3 airplanes just spawned out of thin air. Wow. Great design, guys. The 13th British level is based on the Normandy landings, which apparently consisted of 1 plane bombing and taking out all of the ground fortifications and artillery all by himself before the troops landed, and then for an encore, shooting down a fleet of 24 Nazi fighter planes with absolutely zero backup or assistance. Look, I know some pilots in World War II had ludicrously high kill counts, most of them German, interestingly, but this still doesn't seem in any way based on reality to me. This is the first mission where you can use the fighter bomber, and it's not quite as useless as the bomber, but it's still slower than the fighters that swarm you like kids to the new Ninja Turtles movie, so you won't use it either. You know, I'm starting to think that this game only has, like, 5 maps that it recycles for all the missions. There's a water level, a land level, a half-water, half-land level. The terrain all looks so generic that it honestly would not surprise me to find out that there's a grand total of 3 or 4 maps between all of the levels, just with random buildings and ship spaces everywhere as the levels need. There's no landmarks of any kind, and everything looks the same. It's like being on Namek. I almost crapped myself when I saw a level where the scenery was white and snowy, just the shock of seeing something different. It's interesting to note that the levels that are 100% water with no landmass have a significantly better frame rate than the levels that do have land, which raises the question, why? The ground is a flat texture with one solid color. What the hell is the game rendering that's using so much of its resources? Another example of cheap production values, every single level uses the same music. Each faction has one song that plays at every single level of their campaign. Even if you stick with the game long enough to make actual progress into the campaigns, you'll find that all of the game's levels get to feeling the same pretty quickly. Levels typically fall into one of 3 categories. There are, let's call them dogfighting levels, where your entire objective is to shoot down all the enemy planes. There are escort levels where you have to keep an ally vessel alive until the end of the level. And there are bombing levels where your objective is to destroy a set of land units with your bombs. But here's the problem. The AI tends to flat out ignore your escort in order to dogpile you in the escort missions, so they devolve into basic dogfights. And bombing levels turn into dogfight levels too, because you can't bomb your targets until you've downed all the planes in the area. So every level plays the same. Fight a group of planes, bomb your targets. Fight a group of planes, bomb your targets. The game repeats itself more often than that damn happy song. I hate that music. The only differences between the levels is the difficulty, how badly you want to pull your own hair out. So even if you do stick around, you'll find there isn't much reason to. And it's not like there's a story for you to stick around for either. World War II Aces was a very conflicting game for me to review. If you play on the normal or hard mode, the game is just an endurance test of how long you could stick it out before you pitch your controller through a wall. I made it about 20 minutes before I rage quit, and it took a long time to muster the will to get back to it. If you stick to the easy mode, I can see how you might enjoy it. The levels can still get frustrating, but the game is playable. Flying games might be scarce these days, but most of the ones I've played are better than World War II Aces. Turns out, beggars can be choosers.